Hey, this is Jordan Wilson, and I'd like to share some cool pointers on how to scale a Mongo database. This article was written by David Mitton, uh, MongoDB master and CEO of Server Density. And the article goes something like this. The people at Server Density process 2 billion docs per day and 30 terabytes of data per month to generate real-time graphs for their customers. They have been using MongoDB in production since mid-2009. To generate all this information smoothly, they have scaled their databases. I will go over some of the key points David Mitton has learned over the years. So we'll go down to 1, and he suggests using dedicated hardware and SSDs. All their MongoDB instances run on dedicated servers across 2 data centers at SoftLayer. They have had bad experiences with virtualization before because they have no control over the host, and databases need guaranteed performances from disk IOs. Um, and when running on shared storage, for example SAN, um, this is difficult to achieve unless you get guaranteed throughput from things like AWS provisions, IOPS on EBS, which are backed by SSDs. MongoDB doesn't really have many bottlenecks when it comes to CPU because CPU bound operations are rare. Um, but what really causes problem is CPU steal. When other guests on the host are competing for the CPU resources, the way they've combated those problems is to eliminate the possibility of CPU steal and noisy neighbors by moving onto dedicated hardware, and they avoid problems with shared storage by developing the DD path onto locally mounted SSDs. And another big thing is the use of database sharing from uniform distribution. Every item they monitor, for example, a server has a unique Mongo ID, and they use this as a shard key for storing the metrics data. The query index is on the item ID. For example, the server ID, the metric type, for example, load average, and the time range. But because every query always has the item ID, it makes a good shard key. Uh, that said, it is important to ensure that there aren't large numbers of documents under a single item ID because that can lead to jumbo chunks which cannot be migrated. Jumbo chunks arise from failed splits where they're already over the chunk size but cannot be split any further. To ensure that the shard chunks are always evenly distributed, they've been using hashed shard key functionality in MongoDB 2.4. Hashed shard keys are often a good choice for ensuring uniform distribution, but if you end up not using the hashed field in your queries, could actually hurt performance because these non-targeted scatter gather queries has to be used. And moving down is another big thing. Take care over query and schema design. The biggest hit on performance I have seen when documents grow, particularly when you are doing huge numbers of updates. If the document size increases after it's been written, then the entire document has to be read and rewritten to another part of the data file with the indexes updated to point to the new location, which takes significantly more time than updating the existing document. As such, it's important to design your schema and queries to avoid this and use the right modifiers to minimize what has to be transferred over the network, and then applies to an update to the document. A good example of what you shouldn't do when updating documents is to read the document into your application, update the document, then write it back to the database. Instead, use the appropriate commands such as set, remove, and increment to modify documents directly. Moving on to the conclusion, what is scaling is an incremental process. There are rarely one thing that you will give you will there are rarely one thing that will give you a big win. All of these tweaks and optimizations together help us to perform thousands of write operations per second and get response times within 10 milliseconds while using a write concern of 1. Ultimately, all of this ensures that our customers can load the graphs they want incredibly quick, while behind the scenes we know that the data is being written quickly, safely, and that they can scale it as they continue to grow. Now, I hope everyone has taken something away from this article. I know I did. Have a nice day, everybody.